Our next fighter making his way to the cage, Ricardo Robles.
Next up, 41-year-old Ricardo Robles. The 5'8" fighter is an orthodox fighter out of Altadena, California, currently training with NZT under Frank Culture. A Pankration background of 5 to 6 years. Don't let that age fool you. Ricardo Robles is no easy out. Currently 2 wins and 3 losses. You know, he definitely has some striking ability, but his real background is in that grappling.
You know, that's going to come in really handy, especially because he is a no-gi blue belt, and in no-gi you focus on MMA stuff all the time, so I think it helps just slightly more than a traditional jiu-jitsu background. Yeah,
that no-gi definitely translates when, you know, you're not able to use the belt for leverage.
You don't have any lapels, there's no belt, you can't grab the pants. You have to rely strictly on your clinching and using butterflies and hooks and things like that a little bit more than you do when you have all those other tools.
You know, Ricardo, not only a no-gi blue belt, but his wrestling is continuing to improve. He changes levels really well, has a really fast double leg takedown. You know, even though he has 3 losses, in those fights as well, you could see the wrestling ability of the 41-year-old fighter.
Oh, wrestling.
And his opponent making his way to the cage, Pious Enilolobo.
And his opponent in the red corner, 36-year-old Pious Enilolobo Jr., Voodoo, his nickname. The debut fighter stands 5 feet tall, plus another 7 inches, from Englewood, California. But he spent 10 years in school in Nigeria. His parents are Nigerians who came here to study before he was born. He was born here, went back to Nigeria and studied there for a number of years, came back, and now he is currently an instructor at Flying Kick Martial Arts and trains at Big John McCarthy's Ultimate Training Academy here in Los Angeles.
Well, that's pretty cool. Big John McCarthy, I think they know what they're doing over at that gym. If I were going to train, I wouldn't mind training under Big John.
He's definitely one of those guys who knows a whole lot. Now, this is one of those old school throwback matches, a traditional striker versus grappler matchup. Ricardo Robles, really, we've talked about his grappling background already, but Pious Enilolobo Jr., this guy has lots of big techniques, another Shotokan and Taekwondo guy.
I think that will come into play as long as they can stand up. But going back to the wrestling thing, the key with wrestling is you get to control where the fight goes. So a strong wrestler, if they want to stand, they get to stand. But if they want to take it to the ground, if the opponent doesn't have great sprawling or great defense, then you're going to the ground and you don't get to work your striking as much.
Well, it's one of those questions. You know, I'm sure that Pious doesn't have a complete lack of a background. Pious actually called for this fight. He said, I want the ponytail guy. And now it's kind of a joke over at NZT. Ricardo's nickname is Ponytail Guy.
Hey, you know what? I love call-out fights. There is nothing better than somebody going, I want you. Because then anytime there's a little bit of trash talking, however good-natured it is, it makes the fight a little bit more interesting. If there's nothing but a show of respect and
all right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Our next fight is scheduled for 3 2-minute rounds in the 155-pound division. Introducing first, fighting out of the blue corner, a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He comes to the cage with a record of 2 wins and 3 losses. He stands at 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighing in at 155.2 pounds. Representing NZT Pankration from Pasadena, California, Ricardo Robles. And his opponent across the cage, fighting out of the red corner, a freestyle fighter making his debut. He stands at 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighing at 156.2 pounds, fighting with BJMUTA and Flying Kick MMA from Englewood, California, Pious Enilolobo. Man in charge of the action, Derek Guard.
Get ready, folks, for this next bout between Ricardo Robles in our blue corner and Pious Enilolobo Jr. in the red corner.
I think this is going to be a really exciting fight. I can't wait to see where these guys take it right off the bat.
A touch of hands early on. Pious throwing a big kick, a left hook, a left hook. Ricardo did not like those strikes, went for a takedown, but so far, Pious's defensive wrestling countering the offense of Ricardo.
I think that helped him with that punch early on. It seemed to knock him off his game a little bit.
Now you can see Pious really loading up on these big strikes. That was a big looping left hook, and Pious knows, no, I do not want this on the ground.
Pious wants to stand. Looks like
the look in Pious's eyes right now, really, really focused. Ricardo circling, trying to create an opening to get that takedown.
Looks like he has the eye of a tiger a little bit. He does look like he means business.
Now Pious throwing a lot of big techniques. We talked about this earlier. Expect lots of big movement, flying stuff. But here we go. We didn't expect a takedown from Enilolobo Jr.
No, that looked a little bit like a high drive.
Now here's what you gotta love. The Pious knows that he's got the advantage in the striking, so he backs out. Doesn't want to engage with a guy who has a much more experienced jiu-jitsu background.
No, and I think Ricardo looks like he's being a little bit cautious. I think that first flurry kind of got into his head a little bit, and it looks like it's still there.
Pious stalking, trying to set something up, swinging wide. And now here we go, Pious on top, trying to rain down some blows.
He's got to get those hips in. He's got to get that. He's got to at least get one leg. He has one leg, so he could work that half guard right there, but he's up against the cage, so he needs to get his hips out, because on top, Pious has all the advantage squishing him into that corner right now.
And there goes Ricardo circling, shrimping a little bit, trying to create some space, doing everything he can to relieve himself of the dangerous position.
Now, Ricardo's using a little bit of that lockdown, which is it's a 10th planet move in keeping that leg locked down, but what he needs to do is control the body if he's going to use it, because as we can see, it's not very effective unless you're also controlling the body.
Now lots of big explosives and flurries from Pious, but every time he backs out, you see an unbelievable level of calmness. And that's what's really interesting here, is a guy who's able to remain so calm, and that might just be something that comes with experience and age.
Absolutely, he seems incredibly composed, and I think he also knew that he won that round. So that, I'm sure that lends to a little bit of composure.
You know, for those of you who didn't catch this earlier, the combined age of these two fighters is 76 years old. These are two guys who show you that fitness is not something for necessarily people who are only in their 20s. These two are both well-conditioned, very fit fighters, really brave to be swinging each other so hard in this round.
I agree. I think that, you know, both of their ages are going to lend to a little bit of maturity that other fighters maybe don't have the opportunity to have. At 36 and 41, you've been there, you've been knocked down in life, you know, a couple punches to the face, nothing.
Well, let's see what they have for us in round number 2. Can Ricardo Robles change the tenor of this fight and turn this into a grappling match? Or is Pious Enilolobo Jr. going to continue to throw those big strikes on the feet? Round 2 will decide the next big swing of fate in this match.
Ricardo needs to come out and get off first. He needs to control this next round and start making it his fight a little bit more.
Round 2, and again, you see Pious taking center of the cage. A couple of quick jabs for distance from Ricardo. Pious trying to establish early, throws that outside leg kick, but quickly, look at this, not what you expected. Pious comes in, grabs a clinch, and immediately steps over into the mount position.
Yeah, and I think that Ricardo maybe gave up that mount just a little too easy. He needs to get his hips out. He needs to grab a leg, grab half guard. He needs to get away from the cage and oompa over him, and he's given up his back now. You know, I'm not sure I want to give up my back to somebody who's being this aggressive.
Now, one thing we can see, though, is Enilolobo's less experience here on the ground. Gave up that mount position, wasn't keeping it tight, and he's giving Ricardo opportunities here for leg locks and other ways to escape.
He is. He's giving up a lot of opportunities here that Ricardo might be able to capitalize on if he can grab a couple limbs. He needs to get his knee in. He needs to grab one of those legs, or he needs to get, there he goes. He's getting up. I'd give up that leg and not go for the single leg and try and work the body a little bit more. Maybe go for an electric chair or go back to lockdown.
So let's explain that electric chair for those not familiar with the 10th planet parlance.
From where Ricardo is, if he grabbed the lockdown like he had and hold on to one leg and then gets his shoulder underneath the other leg of Pious, he can basically split him in half, which is what we like to call the electric chair.
Look at that. Pious changing fortunes. Not Pious, sorry. Ricardo changing fortunes, grabbing onto that single leg, using it to escape. And Pious wanted nothing of playing a defensive ground game there.
You know, if Ricardo wants to go to the ground, he needs to make those takedowns a lot stronger. That was a little bit of a better takedown attempt this time, but he's not strong enough with those takedowns, and so he's giving up bad positioning when they go to the ground.
You know, one thing we're seeing here.
Oh, there goes the electric. He could have had it if he had lockdown. He was right in line for the electric chair.
One thing we are seeing here is, despite many similarities in these fighters in terms of their age and experience, Enilolobo definitely a lot stronger when they're reaching each other. Pious might have a technique advantage on the ground, but I think that's being mitigated so far by the power of Pious.
I agree. I think Pious is actually being more aggressive, and he's controlling the ground, which is really surprising because with Ricardo's background, you would expect his wrestling to be slightly stronger than it's been.
Now, one thing that might have been of concern before this fight is that the initial weigh-in, Pious was a little bit overweight. Luckily, it wasn't much. It was only about 0.2 of a pound. But you never know how much having to suck up, even that little,
Sure.
might affect somebody, especially if they're not used to trying to make that change.
Absolutely, and we don't know how much he cut. So that 0.2 of a pound could have been a part of 10 pounds that he had to cut. And it could have a huge effect on everything from your gas tank to how easily, I'm sorry, your gas tank and your ability to stay strong through the whole fight.
Well, one thing about the amateur ranks, we have same-day weigh-ins, which does cut down significantly on the weight cuts. People are doing a lot less sucking down. So now we have round number 3 here. Again, Pious Enilolobo Jr. in the red and Ricardo Robles in the blue. Ricardo now throwing out some jabs, trying to measure that distance again.
Yeah.
Circling.
Ricardo looks a little bit more cautious this round. I like it.
A front kick attempt from Pious. You know, Pious not throwing in bunches, but when he does throw, he's throwing big techniques. Pious stalking, really trying to trap Ricardo Robles in the corner.
He needs to get out of that corner, and he needs to set up his takedown attempts with maybe a couple punches and a kick combination. Because what he's doing right now isn't being effective.
And the story of this fight, Pious throwing a couple of strikes, Ricardo going to the ground, trying to create something there, and Pious backing on out.
See, there's another example. He didn't set it up and fell short of that takedown.
Now here we have Pious really loading up on these knees to the body. Probably some of the most significant strikes landed so far in this fight. And that's a third
Ricardo
knee
needs
here
to get
in
his hips
succession.
in a little bit closer to stop the length on those knees. And here,
Oh, that's a big kick.
that was a long knee.
Caught, though, by Ricardo Robles. And again, though, you see him ducking under that double leg, and Pious really using that power to prevent it from going in.
Exactly, and he's in the perfect electric chair position. He really needs to learn how to utilize that lockdown position if he's going to keep going to it. He's not going to guard. He's not being successful with those takedowns, and there it is. He could have it.
Pious really trying his best to control Robles here on the ground. Robles attempting to escape out the back. With 20 seconds left, our referee stands them back up. Let's see if there's anything left in the tank these last 10 seconds.
I feel like the refs have to stand them up quicker than in a 5-minute round because the rounds are so short. They don't give them as much time to work on the ground.
Well, we'll see what happens here, but it looks like we will probably have a decision victory win for Pious Enilolobo Jr.
I would have to agree with that. I don't think Ricardo's game was strong enough. He kept going to weak position and giving up better positions that he could have been on the ground.
Well, it's an interesting question. You know, Ricardo in the past has been really capable. His double leg has been successful in the past. And he came up against a guy who both wore him out early on, that took away some of the power of that double leg, and who himself was really strong. And I wonder if Ricardo, partway through, didn't really know what to do with his game plan.
I agree. Or he could have lost his gas tank a little bit. And I think that Pious was able to keep the same pressure throughout each round and not really give Ricardo any room to maybe regroup a little bit that he lost in that first flurry of the first round.
Now, Pious showing he still has energy left. You know, I gotta wonder, what's Pious's plan in terms of involvement from here? Because he's definitely got strength, He's definitely got a good mentality. He knew where he was strong, knew where he was weak.
Absolutely.
And his wrestling is better than he expected it to be. You know, I think that people thought that we were going to have the wrestling advantage more in the camp of Ricardo Robles. But what do you want to see Pious do between now and the next time we see him in the cage?
I want to see Pious really work on his wrestling, and I want to see Robles come back and do what we've seen him do in the past. He's really exciting, and I want to see that again. I think tonight, for whatever reason, he got knocked off his game, and I'd like to see him come back before maybe his age takes him out of the game a little bit.
You know, Robles, as we talked before, definitely has a good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu background. And I think that if he puts together, you know, a little more of that striking game, we'll be able to see the overall game of Ricardo Robles really shine.
Yes, I'd like to see both of these fighters maybe go back and really concentrate on their wrestling in their next camp and just be really strong in the setups for the takedowns.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I can put in half the effort that these guys are putting in at 36 and 41, I will count myself lucky.
I agree.
For the official decision, let's hear from Salvador Arellano.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, after 3 rounds of actions, we go to the judges' scorecard. All 3 judges score the fight 30-27 for your winner by unanimous decision. Out of the red corner, Pious Enilolobo.
Hey Pious, congratulations on your first win. How you feeling today?
I feel fantastic.
Was it good to get the first fight out of the way? Was it everything you thought?
It was everything I thought.
And more?
The floor was a little weird, but I got used to it quick.
Was your game plan to keep the fight standing and strike, it looked like?
We understand that Mr. Robles is a very good grappler, and we're gonna give him his respect and stay off the ground. That's what we planned, and we did our best to stay on our feet.
Congratulations. Anybody you want to thank?
I want to thank everybody that came out, that bought a ticket for me, for everyone else. I want to thank my coaches. I want to thank BJMUTA, Flying Kick, every single training partner that helped me get ready for this, my family, God. Thank you very much.
There it is here. One more time for Pious.